When I tried it on before, I was a bit concerned that I wasn't going to have enough room under here for the underarm and like round the sleeve, and I thought it was all going to end up really restrictive, or I'd end up walking around like this because it was so uncomfortable. This is so thick that I don't think I would wear it as a regular shirt, like under things. I think it's an overshirt. It's a shacket. It's a shacket. My husband's going to hate me for saying that. Hello, welcome back to Shirty Deeds. I'm Jen. I like to talk about all things knitting and sewing. And today we're going to have another one of those sew and knit cast episodes where we go through a few finished projects and some projects that I've still got on the go. But first, can I just say an enormous thank you, because I've been absolutely bowled over by the response to my first two videos. I've wanted to do YouTube for quite a long time. I thought it would be really fun, and making videos seemed like another hobby that I might be into. And I thought it would be a really nice way of connecting with the sewing and knitting community online, because there's not many people in my everyday life that are into that stuff in a big way. So I was really nervous about hitting that publish button late one Thursday night after I'd finished editing the first video, and I thought, is anybody even going to be interested in watching this at all? And it turns out you were. And at the current count, I am just shy of 500 subscribers, which has just blown my mind. When I think of what 500 people altogether would look like, that's a lot of people. And I'm so grateful, and you all left such lovely, complimentary, positive comments about things, and I really feel like I'm part of the community now, and it's been wonderful, honestly. Someone even said that I reminded them of Olivia Colman, the award-winning, amazing movie star. And that was a huge compliment, because, I mean, what a legend. Is it the big teeth and the English accent that did it? Is that where that came from? Anyway, I'm taking it as a huge compliment, thank you. So, if you are new here, have a look at my first two videos, see what you think. Obviously come back here and watch this one, and subscribe, chuck a comment down there, do all the things. It's lovely to have you. And I suppose I'm a YouTuber now, which I never thought would ever be something that came out of my mouth, but here we are. I'm going to continue. First thing I'm going to talk about today is actually not a recent make at all. It's the t-shirt I'm wearing, and it's very old. I made it a few years ago, and I've worn it almost to death, although it's actually, because it's made out of good quality jersey fabric, it's holding up pretty well. But somebody in the comments on my second video noticed me wearing this in some of the B-roll footage and said, oh, it's the black t-shirt you're wearing, a handmade thing, and what's the pattern, please? So I did reply to her, but I thought other people might also be interested, because we're all trying to find the perfect t-shirt, aren't we? And this is actually not a t-shirt pattern at all, it's a dress pattern. And the dress is by Style Arc, and it's the Montana midi dress. I'll perhaps put some details up about it now. It's lovely. It can be made out of knit or woven fabrics. This is obviously a knit, but I've made it in woven fabrics as well as the dress version. And the first jersey version I made was lovely print dress that I just wear to death every summer. It's really comfortable. And it's just one of those chuck it on and go type items, which is just the best, isn't it? And I liked the shape of the neckline and the top section and the shoulders and how it fit me round the top of my body so much. I thought, this is like my perfect t-shirt. I need to use this to create my perfect t-shirt pattern. And that's what I did. And I've now made several of these in lots of colours. I've got a blue one, a mint one, a white one, a leopard print one. And there are plans for others with other jerseys that I've got in my stash too, because it's really comfortable, it's quite slimline, so it goes under things as well as being good on its own. And just to give you an idea of how I turned a dress pattern into the t-shirt, it was pretty straightforward. This is the top bodice piece. I've got the front here, but I just did exactly the same for the back as I did for the front. And this is front bodice. Obviously you cut it on the fold to just create one front piece. And it's got quite a long shoulder section, so it comes down just past the end of the shoulder, and there's no separate sleeve that you sew on, so it's really straightforward. And for the dress version, you do either a fully lined bodice section, so that sorts out all your hem edges, like your neckline and the sleeve line. Or you can, it also includes pieces that you can do like a hidden bound edge on those. And that's what I've done on most of the versions I've made of this. But I thought for a t-shirt, I wanted to just be able to do a double folded or a folded hem for the sleeves. So in order to do that, I thought maybe I'll make the sleeves a little bit longer. So kind of did this rudimentary, took a couple of goes to get it right, but I did a kind of rudimentary extra pattern piece that I just add on whenever I want to make the t-shirt version of this. And actually I could add it on if I made the dress version, couldn't I? But I didn't want to have to trace out this whole piece again, so I just did the extra bit that I lay across. I've got a line on it. I don't know if you can see that. I've got a line on it so I can see where the edge of it needs to sit on that pattern piece when I cut the pieces out. And I can have a slightly extended sleeve portion on it. And then of course that's very cropped because it's it's sort of like a raised waistline on the dress that the gathered skirt goes into. So I also, in the same way, made a bottom section that I just line up with the bottom of the main pattern piece. Sorry, shaky hands syndrome. And did a sort of nice curved-ish hem on the bottom of it. So I just used those extra pieces in addition to this to cut out my front and my back. And then did a nice kind of hidden bound edge for the neckline, so it's really clean looking, and the folded hem for the sleeves, double fold for the hem at the bottom, and it makes a really nice t-shirt. So one pattern that's done me loads of nice dresses now is like my favourite ever t-shirt design, and I thought you might be interested in seeing that because someone commented on the t-shirt being nice. So I've got a couple of finished projects today. Turns out doing YouTube provides great impetus to finish things and do what you say you're going to do. I have no doubt at all that this item would still be a big, knotty, yarny mess if it wasn't for the fact that in my first video I made a pact with you all that I was going to finish this damn thing by the time I next recorded one of these videos. And I did. It's my inspired by Doctor Who scarf in lovely linen stitch that wasn't from a pattern, I just devised it myself. Quite straightforward. Lovely stripy scarf made out of loads of leftovers from 2 or 3 previous projects. Yeah, 3 previous projects I think. And I'm really happy with it now. It's not a tangle of not woven in ends like last time. It's turned out better than I thought it was going to. I kind of had this feeling that the colours didn't go. We've got bottle green, this kind of turquoisey green colour, pale blue, dark grey, pale grey, brown, red. It was one of those that I thought I'm just going to have loads of colours, and even if they don't go, maybe if I put them all together it'll somehow work. And I think it has. Don't you think? It's really nice. I did it in linen stitch because that creates quite a solid fabric that almost feels, from the front side, feels and looks like a woven more than a knitted. Which has turned out so lovely. And it looks quite neat along the edges. It's quite sort of, I wanted something sturdy so it kind of stood up at the neck like that. And it's still, you know, it's long enough that I can wrap it all the way around. I literally used every scrap of all these yarns that were left, apart from the bottle green, which I've still got a little bit left of. But I just kept going until I ran out of all the colours, basically. And it's turned out really great. And thank you, YouTube, for holding me accountable and turning this from the thing that was sat on the shelf in our living room, making the place look messy, and a big tangle of not woven in ends. Anybody that's done a striped scarf knows how many ends there are to weave in. But finally done it. And that's the wrong side. I managed to do it so neatly that it's barely noticeable. So even if I end up throwing this on and it's the wrong side that's showing, it looks pretty tidy. So success. I can actually wear it now. My next finished item is this. It's a Pogonip pullover. Let me just get it all buttoned up properly. It's a Pogonip pullover that the beady-eyed amongst you that saw the first Sew and Knit Cast will remember and think, hang on, this was a finished item last time. And yes, it was. I thought it was finished. And I've worn it loads already. But I was kind of lamenting the fact that my placket section and collar section, the inside of those, instead of following the instructions properly like I should have done, I kind of messed it up and did this rather ugly looking overlocking that whenever the collar section, the poppers were undone and the collar section was open, looked like I was showing my insides and I didn't like it. So I've so far just been wearing it fully done up the whole time, which is fine, it's comfortable that way, but it wasn't quite perfect. And then, lovely person, let me just check your name. Lovely person in the comments on that first video, Ute. I don't know if that's a male or female name. I'm really sorry. I don't even know if I'm saying the name right. Sorry if I've butchered it. But lovely person, Ute, in the comments suggested that I just get some nice trim and sew it over the ugly overlocking and make it look tidy. And I don't know how I didn't even think of that. I've been sewing for years and years and it didn't even occur to me that I could just add something on to hide it. And that's what I did. So I don't have a big stash of trims at all. I don't have a massive stash particularly, even of fabrics. But I did find this rather nice plain grey cotton twill tape and thought that is just the right width to cover up the ugly insides of the neckline of this Pogonip pullover. I was a little bit concerned about using it because this thing has been washed several times and any shrinking that it might do has already been done because it's been washed several times. I was a bit concerned that fresh out the packet, this cotton, 100% cotton twill tape was then, I'd sew it all in and it would then shrink and mess up the whole neckline of the piece. So I actually did a little hand wash of the length of this. This is what I've got left of it. Did a little hand wash of it, put it on the radiator to dry, thinking, well, if this is going to shrink, I can do the shrinking in advance. And then I sort of ironed it out so that it was flat again because it, you know, I had to wring all the water out of it and it was all scrunched up. But I ironed it and thought, right, I feel safe to use it now. And I sewed it all around the inside of the neckline and the placket. And how much better does that look now? It's like so chic. It's probably even better than if I'd done it right in the first place. So that was a happy little accident. Love those. I actually, because I'd already done all the lovely top stitching in green around this, so it all looks like really tidy and you can barely notice it, I was a bit concerned about, I didn't want to machine sew this on because then it would just look terrible from the front again. So I actually spent the time, a couple of hours on the sofa, hand sewed all around the back neckline piece and then did a bit down the inside of each of the front bits there. So now I'm going to be able to wear this. In fact, I'm going to put it on because I don't think you saw it on last time. I'm going to put it on so you can see. Okay, very casual, cosy, lovely. So obviously so far been wearing it completely done up to avoid the ugly inside showing, but you know, still looks pretty cool. Nice high neckline but loose enough so it's comfortable. And now, so chic, so nice. It looks pretty pro, don't you think? So Ute, thank you. You rescued this from nearly perfect but not quite there to now super stylish. Looked like I bought it in some hideously expensive designer outdoor clothing shop. Total winner. I'm going to take this off now because I've got other things to show you. My hair is going to get mullered in this video. Okay, so I've got some other works in progress. This one was a work in progress from last time. All the pieces, it's a sewing project, all the pieces were already cut out. I just needed to get on and sew it. And I've got pretty far with it. I'm nearly finished. It's this lovely shirt that you may remember in fact, this is a good point at which to say, if you didn't see the previous video yet, all these things might make a bit more sense if you go back and watch that one and then come back here for like the follow-up. So if I can figure out how to do it, I'll put a little one of those like link card things up there. I'm a new YouTuber. I don't know how to do these things, but if I figure it out, I'm going to put it up there so you can follow that link back to the first one and then come back here and you can see this. Anyway, the pieces were all cut out. I hadn't done it yet. It's the birdie button-up pattern by Pattern Scout that I've made several times before. I explained last time I've done like a wide shoulder adjustment on it because I've got big shoulders, etc. And this lovely Robert Kaufman brushed cotton flannel fabric is just one of the nicest fabrics I think I've ever bought. It was quite expensive, but I felt like I'd leveled up my shirt making skills enough that I was now ready for something really solid and expensive looking and lovely that would just last me for the whole of my life. So I bought that fabric. And I don't know whether I was like scared to sew it up or maybe it just like spring came and it was just too heavy a fabric and I wanted to sew spring and summer things, but it didn't get done. And now we're nearly there. So it's got its collar, it's got its sleeves, lovely neat placket sections at the front, and I am incredibly proud. It's going to have long sleeves and cuffs, sort of very classic traditional shirt style. I am so happy with my sleeve plackets. I find sleeve plackets, have I got fluff on that? Oh no, it's just a sort of loose thread. I find sleeve plackets really difficult. They're super small and fiddly, And you may notice I have a bit of a tremor, my hands shake a lot, and anything that's kind of fine and detailed, I often have trouble with. But I don't know whether it's because I bought like properly nice fabric or that it's a bit thicker and weightier, but these are the best sleeve plackets I think I've ever done. So hooray for that. I think they're going to look really smart when the cuffs are on. Now, speaking of the fabric, this, you know how sometimes you don't really know what fabric's going to be like until you start sewing it into something. Even when you're cutting it out, you sort of have an idea of what it's going to be like, and then you start sewing it up with kind of the interfacing in and things, and that's when you really get to know like what the item's going to be like. This fabric is a lot thicker than anything I've made a shirt out of before, and it caused a bit of a problem. It basically, if you make something out of a heavier weight fabric, it can have the effect of the overall like fit of the item being smaller and tighter, because a heavier fabric has less give, and I obviously didn't consider that when I cut these pieces out. I was also cutting it all out of a 2 metre length of a very narrow fabric. It's not 150 centimetres wide, it's sort of like 110 or something like that. And I had 2 metres of it, and I was thinking I was going to make something else out of it. I can't even remember what that was, but then I decided to make a nice, lovely winter shirt out of it, and I was really playing pattern Tetris and squeezing it out of 2 metres of narrow fabric, and I did manage it, but it didn't even occur to me at the time that I might need to make a bigger size because the fabric is so much thicker. Thankfully, again, happy accidents, that might be the theme of today's episode. This is so thick that I don't think I would wear it as a regular shirt, like under things. I think it's an overshirt. It's a shacket. It's a shacket. My husband's going to hate me for saying that, because he really doesn't like those put together words that are like an amalgamation of two things, like coatigan. I was talking about my planned coatigan last week. It like really rubs him up the wrong way, and he's not going to like that this is now a shacket. But it is, purely because of the fabric. Now, I should probably talk also about the yoke section of this. The pattern, the birdie button-up blouse pattern, doesn't have a yoke section. It actually, at the top of the neckline, just has pleats. It's like all one big back piece, and it has pleats that pleat into the neckband for the collar. And on the Pattern Scout website, they have, on their blog section, they have a really useful tutorial on how to change this pattern, the back pattern piece, to have a yoke in it. And on one of my previous versions, I thought, oh, it'd be really nice to try a yoke on the back of a shirt, because I hadn't done the burrito sort of yoke method before. And I thought I would like to add one. So I did that, but I didn't take into account, when I was sort of drafting up the new pieces, didn't take into account that the original one has pleats here. So when I made up the back and front sections of that previous version, and I'd done the shoulder seams, and I was ready to put the collar on, the collar was then too short to fit the entire length there, because it didn't have the pleats in the back section at the back. So on this previous version, the lovely husband, because he's brilliant that way, said, why don't you put some like pleats or darts or something in the back bit of the neckline to bring it in enough that you can then fit the collar on. And it turned out that doing that, putting some little darts in the back, made it fit the back of my neck even better, and just made it sit really nicely around my shoulders and back. So, and I did them so they were kind of visible and noticeable as like a detail, and I thought, I'm gonna turn the mistake into a virtue. Again, happy accidents. And it actually looked so cool, and I liked it so much that every other version that I've done of this since, I've done the same thing. I've done little visible outward darts in the back bit at the top of the yoke that make it fit really nicely, and it's like my kind of signature thing on my shirts now, which is quite nice, isn't it? Another thing to note about doing this yoke section, I couldn't do this full burrito method. Now, anybody that hasn't done the burrito method before, you have your yoke piece that's like the top of the back piece, and then the main body of the shirt coming back. And you have an inner bit, I've done it out of the same fabric here, but you can have your inner bit out of a contrast fabric. The inner bit of fabric and the outer bit of fabric of the yoke then completely enclose all of the inside of the shoulder seams and that back section of yoke. And you do this kind of method where you roll up the front section of the shirt and put the other section of yoke out of it, and then you sort of unravel it all and it magically like encloses all the seams. I'm not describing that very well, but there are lots of video tutorials that you can find on YouTube that would show you how to do that if you're interested in having a go. So I managed to do the nice enclosed seam. This is the inside, by the way. Nice enclosed sort of top stitched seam on the bottom, but this fabric is so thick that I had to just do a regular shoulder seam with overlocking for the inside, which actually looks perfectly fine and very tidy. My overlocking thread is a nice dark grey colour, so it almost matches and it looks really neat and tidy, so I don't mind that at all, actually. So the only other thing to say about this, because of the thick fabric and the fact that it all kind of, the effect of doing it with a heavier, sturdier fabric is that it feels like it shrunk, that has definitely happened. I'm going to put it on so I can show you. Obviously I haven't finished the hem, I haven't got the cuffs on, I haven't done the buttons or anything, buttonholes or anything yet. But you can see how sturdy it is from like the collar. I only did lightweight interfacing in this, but it's pretty sturdy. You can see already it's a shacket, isn't it? It's not a shirt. It's not got enough like movement and give to be a shirt. It's a shacket. So this pattern, even on my versions that are years old, that have been through the wash a million times and shrunk down a bit because they're made of cotton and things, all fit me really comfortably with a bit of room to manoeuvre in. This one, made out of exactly the same pattern pieces, exactly the same size, is a bit on the snug side. I can still move around in it fine, it's really comfortable, the sleeves are going to be fine. I've made it quite long, so that's good for a shacket. But you'll see at the front, we're only just able to meet in the middle. So if I was to try and wear this as a button-up shirt, it would be too small. But thankfully, it's a shacket, so I'm going to wear it like loose and open as an overshirt over things anyway. Thank goodness for that, because I'd have been so gutted if this lovely, expensive, quality fabric ended up in a garment that I didn't like or wouldn't be able to wear because it didn't fit. Actually, as a leave it open, casual shacket, it's going to be great. It's going to be great, and I can't wait to get the cuffs on. I'm so pleased with those. Not sure, now it's not going to be a regular shirt. I'm not sure the buttons I had picked out quite right, but I'll have a look in the stash and see what we can find. I think also it needs a bit of detail at the front because it's quite plain. So luckily, when I cut out the fabric out of my very small amount of fabric last year, I did cut out pockets. There was enough to just squeeze some pockets out, and I'm going to do patch pockets on the front like that, on both sides I think. And that's just going to add the nice finishing touch. I always put things like patch pockets on really late in the game because then you can get them situated exactly where you want them. So those are ready to go for that. So I think that's going to be another success, which is lovely, isn't it? Yay! Okay, next work in progress. Those of you who were here last time will remember this, and there were quite a lot of comments about how you all loved it. And I love it too. I think it was obvious in that last video how enamoured I am with my new sofa blanket. I have made some progress on it because I'm still really enjoying knitting this. The glorious sofa blanket, which someone in the comments described as being quite designer looking, and I just thought, that's all the comment I ever need. It's still beautiful. I'm still really enjoying knitting with the yarn. It's getting a bit big and unwieldy, and having to flip it over for every row is a bit of a chore, but it's now so huge that it's at the point that it's now acting as a blanket as I knit it. So it's keeping me warm, which is great. It's been really cold in the UK over the last week. We had a bit of snow for the first time this year, and it's been freezing in the house. But my new half-finished blanket has been keeping me nice and warm as I'm knitting it. I've knitted another 3 sections since last time. I think I was about here last time. I've knitted another 3 sections, so it's coming along nicely. This middle section is the bit that I've added into the middle to make it longer because I'm tall and I want the blanket to cover me when I'm wanting to be snugly on the sofa. So I'm doing it longer by 2 sections than the pattern originally suggests. But 3 more sections done, so that's 11 done out of 18, and I'm just about to change colours again. So next section is going to sort of mirror this one here. So we're going for the rusty colour and the pale blue colour next. Still really loving this, and lots of you did too, and my lovely mum did also when she saw my video, and she said, "Oh, I really love your blanket, it's gorgeous. I wonder if you might be able to make me one." And I love making my mum things, but any knitters will know that a big blanket like this is quite an undertaking. It's a lot of knitting, it's huge, it takes a very long time. And maybe one day I will make her one for her new house. But I've got a lot of other projects on the go, and now I seem to have picked up an extra hobby, which is making and editing YouTube videos. So there's even less time now. But it got me thinking, I wonder how long this thing is actually going to take me. So I did some knitting maths and tried to work it out. And I'm looking down here because I've made notes and there were sums. Okay. So I thought best way to work out how long it would take, because I haven't timed it at all, of course, at this point, because that's kind of not what you do when you're knitting. You're supposed to just enjoy doing it, aren't you? But I was curious, so I thought I would, when you're doing the mosaic knitting, you only knit with one colour at a time, and with that colour you knit across one way and then knit back the other way, so that's 2 rows. And I thought I'll time how long it takes me to knit 2 rows of one colour, and then I'll be able to maths it out and figure out how long the whole thing would take. So I did, got the stopwatch out and timed 2 whole rows, how long it took me. And it took me 20 minutes and 50 seconds to knit 2 rows. So I thought we need to allow for a bit of faffing time and a bit of having to tink back where I've made mistakes and stuff. So I thought if I round that up to 21 minutes for 2 rows, I'll be able to work out how long, I mean it's an approximation, isn't it? But approximately how long it's going to take me to make this whole thing. So far, 11 sections based on 21 minutes. I've spent 61 hours and 36 minutes on this thing, which is a huge amount of time, isn't it? And for the whole blanket of 18 sections, the 16 plus the 2 extra sections that I'm doing, the final total is 100 hours and 48 minutes. Now, I work 40 hours a week at my regular day job. And so that means that's 2.5 whole working weeks worth of time that this blanket will have taken by the time I've finished. Which is a lot of time. And then, so I'd had all these thoughts, and then when I was making my most recent video, the second video that I put up, where I was talking about all the sort of things that I've learned and appreciate about making my own clothes for the last few years, I did talk about learning like the value of my handmade items and clothing, and also the cost of things. And that made me think, wow, if you were ever of a mind to knit something to sell, I wonder how much you'd have to charge for all that time. So I worked it out. I live in the UK, and the UK minimum wage for people 21 and over is £11.44 per hour. We could have a whole discussion about how that's not enough for an hour's work. But anyway, that's the legal minimum that you can pay somebody for an hour of work. So for the whole blanket, 100 hours and 48 minutes of time, you would have to pay for that time £1,153.15. Over 1,100 quid. And that's at minimum wage. And that doesn't take into account the cost of materials, the planning time, you know, purchasing the materials, any of that, just the actual time knitting, over £1,100. And then I thought, but I consider my time to be worth more than that. And my lovely employer, the NHS, God bless her, thinks my time on a daytime shift is worth £13.13 per hour, so more than minimum wage. And that works out to be £1,323.50 by the time I have finished knitting this blanket. £1,300 essentially. Huge amount of money. And I don't think anyone in their right mind could think that that was going to be a viable way to like make a living by hand knitting things. Which I suppose is why crafts such as knitting, those kind of really slow fashion type ways of producing things, are still a home craft rather than something that can be commercialised easily. I'm sure lots of people would love to buy something like this. I think it's turning out gorgeous. I'm so pleased with it. I mean, people in the comments are saying it looks like a designer piece. And maybe if it was knitted by machines in a factory, it would be viable. But I just can't see anybody paying over £1,000 for this and making it a realistic, viable option. Anyway, that was a bit of a deep dive. I thought it was interesting just to work it out. So I'm going to cherish this even more now, knowing how much all that time is really worth. And it's a good job. I really love it, and I am intending to keep it and use it for a very long time because it's 1,300 quid's worth of gorgeousness, isn't it? So that's the progress on that. Really pleased. Still loving making it. Flying off the needles. Okay. Next work in progress is a new cast on. We all love a new cast on, don't we? I get so excited. And I am very excited about this. This is the Letty by Orlane Such. Again, I'm so bad at pronouncing all these like sort of foreign sounding names. I'm sorry. I'll put some details up on the screen so you can see what the pattern looks like. It's lovely, chunky or bulky weight sweater or jumper, and it's a knit from the top down, seamless from the top down, which I really like. You can try it on as you go along, etc. And you don't have to like knit on neckbands and things later. And it's got this textured yoke section, which before I bought the pattern and I was just looking at the pictures, not being the most proficient knitter of cables in the world, I thought it was cables. turns out it's not. It's not cables at all. It just looks like cables, which is quite clever. It's actually a textured knitting pattern that you do for the yoke, and it knit up quite quickly because it's bulky weight, and was a hell of a lot easier than cables would have been, so that was nice, and I think it looks really great. It also has a technique that I hadn't tried yet, and I keep seeing all of the other knitting YouTubers do tubular cast-ons and tubular bind-offs, and I'd not done that before. And everybody was saying how nice it makes the edge, and I hadn't tried it and I hadn't seen one up close, so I was like, oh. And so when I got the pattern and I was like, it said, oh, do the tubular cast on, and it told you exactly how to do it. It's really good instructions. I was like, oh, I get to have a go at that. So I did, and I've still got you sort of do it, you have to use a bit of scrap yarn to do an almost, would you call that a provisional cast on? And then you kind of start knitting your your proper yarn onto it. And I can't remember exactly the technique because I was just following the instructions letter for letter, and it's the first time doing it. But I haven't taken that provisional cast on the scrap yarn out yet, but I can already tell it's made a really tidy, rounded, lovely edge for the top edge of the neckline, which I think I'm going to be really pleased with. So that's a big tick in a box. I now understand why everybody seems to love that cast on method so much, because just the results are great. So really chuffed with that. I did make, actually I'm going to put this on so you can see and I can explain. I did make a small modification to this. I was a bit concerned as I was knitting it to start with that it wasn't going to be big enough around the shoulders. So I got to the end of the yoke section and I put it on scrap yarn so I could try it on before splitting for sleeves. And it turns out actually it fits really well and it's lovely and it feels lovely. But I did think, oh, the yoke doesn't seem as long as it looked in the sample pictures. So I got the measuring tape out, and although my stitch gauge was bang on, my row gauge wasn't the same, and it turned out my row gauge was a lot fewer rows. So that whole yoke section had turned out not as long. But it was fitting well, like size-wise, so I thought, oh gosh, what am I going to do? So when I finished, I decided in the end, when I finished the yoke, you do a few sort of raglan increases to increase the size out a bit more before splitting for the sleeves. So I did those, and then I worked out probably wanted about an inch and a half extra. So I did 6 more rounds, just plain stockinette around before splitting for the sleeves. And I'm really glad I did, because when I tried it on before I was a bit concerned that I wasn't going to have enough room under here for the underarm and like round the sleeve, and I thought it was all going to end up really restrictive, or I'd end up walking around like this because it was so uncomfortable. So adding those 6 extra rows before splitting for the sleeves was definitely the right thing to do, and I think it's going to fit really nicely. So I'm really chuffed with this. The yarn, in case you're interested, it's another acrylic yarn, and it's another Stylecraft yarn, which you may know from last time that I quite like. And they sell loads of it at my local yarn shop. This is Stylecraft Special Chunky. And I haven't knit with that many chunky yarns in the past, but this is actually a really nice one. It's super soft feeling, but the thing that I was looking for this, I wanted a kind of plummy, purpley pink colour to start off with, but also because of the lovely texture that of course at the time I thought was going to be cables, but it turned out it wasn't. I wanted something that was quite a round, tidy yarn, so nothing that had too much fuzz, or nothing that was going to like squish down and not hold that texture and give really nice stitch definition. So this one is quite good for it, I thought. I was just looking around the yarn shop, sort of thinking, oh, I need a chunky weight yarn to make that. I knew I wanted to make this jumper. And this one is quite round and bouncy. And I think the stitch definition that I'm getting is really nice. So it turns out this is a good choice for this. I'm pretty chuffed with it. So I'm going to continue with this. It's flying off the needles at a rate of knots because it's out of chunky yarn and I've been really enjoying knitting it. And I almost feel like I need to tell myself, because I love the colour and the yarn is really nice and the pattern is really nice and I'm enjoying it so much that I just keep knitting and knitting. I mean, I started this a week ago and it's already this big. I need to tell myself to slow down a bit and enjoy the process of knitting this a bit more, because it's just been quite joyful. And maybe I need to be knitting on some of my other things like my blanket and stuff, as well as this, because I just need to savour the process. Anywho. Oh, that's that one. Yeah, hair getting mullered. So, final work in progress. In case you're wondering, I usually have one sewing project on the go at once, which is why I'm sewing the shacket up at the moment. I do that with sewing because I don't like having to rethread my machine with different coloured threads all the time, or rethreading the overlocker too much. And I get a bit like, I feel a bit overwhelmed if I've got too many sewing projects on the go at once. But I think I've found out my sweet spot for how many knitting projects I've got on the go is 3. Because then whatever they are, there's usually one that I've got to a point that it's like loads of stockinette and I can do quite mindlessly. There's probably one where I'm on a complicated section and that's when I need to really focus on it if I just want to be knitting. And then there'll be sort of another one that's just kind of a longer ongoing project, like the blanket. So I've got 3 knitting projects on the go: the blanket, the jumper I've just showed you, and we are resurrecting my big bugbear from last week. You may remember the tale of the twice frogged yarn that has been 2 previous projects that got frogged because they were a bit disastrous. And out of this, I was making a very sensible grey jumper, which I decided by that point in the video wasn't a sensible grey jumper, it was a boring grey jumper. And maybe it is still boring. But I think I might have decided to resurrect it and keep going. Few of you commented on this, actually, and it was really helpful. So thank you to the people that did. I'm looking at my notes again. Few people commented. Karen, thank you for your suggestion. Seems like you don't like the yarn, and she's basically suggesting maybe I could frog it and then use it to knit up gifts for people, things like mittens and stuff, perhaps for Christmas or birthdays or whatever. Very good suggestion. If we continue having disasters with this, maybe that's what will end up happening. Rhonda said, oh, you're just bored with it, frog it and donate the yarn to a charity shop. Which is also a good suggestion because it means the yarn's not going to get wasted. Hopefully someone will then buy it, donate a bit of money to charity in the process, and then be able to enjoy knitting it themselves. Very good suggestion. And then Ute and Lynn's both had similar suggestions of maybe, as I get further down, adding some colour work or texture or stripes or something further down to kind of keep it interesting and zhuzh it up a bit, so that I'm not so bored with it. Both good suggestions, and actually I still might do that if I continue with this and decide I need to give it some pizzazz. But anyway, the lovely Rima reminded me that actually we all need those plain basics in our wardrobes. I think I agree with you. You do need the plainer things, because otherwise what do you put the fancy statement pieces with to then make complete outfits? You do need some basics to kind of let the other things sing, don't you? So a sensible grey jumper is a sensible idea, isn't it? So with that in mind, I put it on, I hadn't actually tried this on, had I? But I put it on some scrap yarn and decided I'm going to try it on, so we'll see if it's fitting. And so I did that, and actually I quite like it. I liked it more than I thought I was going to. It fits. It's quite a slim fit, particularly on the arms, but I don't mind that because we're just going for a, you know, it's not oversized, it's not statement-y, we're just going for a nice, plain, slim jumper. Oh, by the way, I should say what pattern it is again. It's the Stockholm Sweater by Petite Knit, and I'm making it out of this very affordable grey DK yarn that my mum bought in Aldi, the budget supermarket chain. Anywho, tried it on, fits quite nice. I think the colour looks good on me. I think it's going to be a really good basic. So thank you, Rima. I am going to power on with this and continue and get it done. It's quite a small gauge, so it might take me a while, but I have already, you may remember this was only elbow length last time, or less than elbow length. I've knitted a few more inches of this sleeve, and the sleeve is, as I said, quite close fitting, but it's still fitting nice. But I have a question to ask the perhaps more experienced knitters amongst you. The reason that I started on the sleeve is because my first ball of the many balls of frog yarn ran out at this point. So I thought I'm going to pick up for the sleeve and do a sleeve first, because I've got such long arms that sleeve island is where I get a bit stuck with things, and quite often I'll have done the whole body of something and then I get to the sleeves and I just kind of lose interest a bit. And sleeves, they're small circles, aren't they, and they're a bit trickier to knit, and I kind of don't enjoy it so much. So I thought, let's pick up for a sleeve, do the sleeves first, and then I can just use the rest of the yarn to do the body, and that's much more kind of like mindless, and I can just do it in front of the TV and get it finished. But now I'm thinking, because this neckline, obviously the neckline's not going to be like this, it's a, you pick up stitches and apply the neckline afterwards. It's obviously a ribbed sort of neckband that's, I think it's one of those folded over ones, which are really tidy looking, aren't they? They're nice. I'm a bit concerned that when I do that and it's got the ribbed neckline on, it's gonna sort of like go a bit like this and pull it all up a bit. And then if I've already finished the sleeves, they might end up creeping up the arm and then they won't be long enough. And then I'll have that whole palaver of like ripping out the end of the sleeve and like knitting more onto it, and it will just be a total pain in the bum. So do you think I ought to sort of stop here, do the neckline, make that all nice, and then I will have a better chance at getting my sleeve the length I want it? Can people please tell me in the comments? You were so helpful with this last time that I'm putting it out to the crowd. Neckline next before I finish the sleeve and do the next sleeve? Or do you think I should just carry on with the sleeve, finish it and hope for the best? So I think that's all I've got to talk about this time. I hope you've enjoyed seeing the progress that I'm making, seeing those couple of finished things, including the was finished then wasn't and then was finished again item. I've again really enjoyed making this. Thank you so much. I know I keep saying this, but thank you for being interested in hearing me waffle on about all this stuff. It's been so enjoyable and lovely, and I hope you'll stick around. If you're not a subscriber yet, join in, hit that button. Leave me a comment below, let me know what you're up to. Let me know what you think about that neckline sleeve situation on the sensible grey jumper. Really appreciate your help on that. And whatever you are sewing, knitting, making or creating this week, enjoy it, savour it, and I will see you next time.